Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Toledo on this January 22nd, 2023. It is the Chinese New Year today, ushering in the year of the rabbit. And I just found out this morning that the zodiac predicts 2023 to be a year of hope. I am Judy Lee Troutman, today's service associate. Melissa Jeter, student minister seminarian, will lead the service. Tom Sheehan will provide the music. We are a church with no set doctrine or official creed. Instead, we covenant to support each other in our individual search for truth and meaning. We welcome everyone, as we sang in our opening song. If you are a visitor, you may notice in the pew rack in front of you a rainbow-colored card with our principles and sources. Feel free to take it with you. There is also a yellow card that you may use to introduce yourself to us. If you include your email address, we will send you our weekly email with news of our various activities. As you meet people today, feel free to introduce yourself and ask any questions you may have. We also welcome those of you who are joining us virtually this morning. At the beginning of the service, before we get into sacred mode, we give you a pretty long list of announcements. We want you to know that we're still emerging from pandemic isolation, and there's lots to do in the Toledo Unitarian congregation. Please be a part of our church on Sundays and throughout the week. We thank Tom Sheehan, who volunteered to do the music today, and Tom has an announcement.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to repeat my announcement from last week, which is that the month of February is going to be a very exciting month in our music program. On February 5th and 12th, we will have a guest musician who is a candidate for the position of music director. And we may have another candidate playing on the other 2 Sundays of February. So the challenge for us now is to get people together early on those Sunday mornings, and we're thinking of 9:15, so that our guest musicians have a choir and other musicians to work with, and just so we all get to know each other. So please, if you are interested in participating in music, or if you know a member of our congregation who may not be getting this message one way or another, please ask them to be aware that on those Sundays, we really need participation so that everybody can be involved in getting us a wonderful new music director. Thank you very much.
Music isn't the only category for our Sunday service needs. We are also very grateful to each of the tech crew in the back who broadcast the service on YouTube so that members and visitors may view the service at home, either live or recorded. Are you interested in how to make television? We need tech and production crew members, and no experience is necessary. Our loyal production lead, Walter McGee, will provide training. It's not heavy lifting. You get to learn new skills, and the other volunteers are nice to get along with. Please help us to provide our live streams. And one more call for Sunday volunteers. Would you like to be a service associate up here like I am this week, helping the service to happen by assisting the minister and giving this welcome, some readings, and perhaps other assistance? Please contact our office or Reverend Tim. The more people signed up, the better variety of Sunday services we can have. If you'd like to use an assisted listening device to help with hearing our public address system during services, we're now broadcasting on FM 90.7, and we have a couple of small radios with headphones available. We're still trying to develop better ways for assisted listening. If you want to try the system out or have suggestions, please let Reverend Tim know. The Multi-Faith Council of Northwest Ohio is offering 3 registered World Interfaith Harmony Week events. The annual World Interfaith Harmony UN Observance Week is February 1st through 7th. MFC is holding, number 1, a faith leader breakfast at Grace Lutheran Church on Wednesday, February 1st from 9 to 10:30 a.m. Clergy and committee leaders from all faith traditions are welcome to this free breakfast. Registration is requested. On the next day, Thursday, February 2nd, from 5 to 7 p.m., right here at this church, we will be holding a local potluck in coordination with the North American Great Potluck Party, hosted by the World Interfaith Network. We will meet in person and then connect via Zoom to other interfaith groups in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So please bring a dish to share, labeled so that we are mindful of dietary concerns and traditions, and registration is requested. Finally, the February Universal Worship Service is on Facebook Live at 6 p.m. Monday, February 6th, and the theme is loving kindness. Details of these events are on the Multi-Faith Council Facebook page, and there are also some flyers at the entrance with registration details. Feel free to take one. Also today, there will be a gathering in solidarity with Washington, D.C. for Roe versus Wade's 50th anniversary, which is today. This is organized by Unitarian Universalist Lexi Staples. There will be music and spoken word, and it's at the Pride Center 419, located at 2413 Collingwood Boulevard. And finally, today is the last day for quilt raffle tickets. You may buy some, if you haven't already, from Julia, who's at the entrance table, and then the winning ticket will be drawn during coffee hour today.
I am Melissa Jeter, seminarian, and I will be leading our service today. In our hearts and minds and with our spirit, I am curious about how people hold each other, how we're holding each other when we're suffering. What I have learned is that we often refrain from reaching out to people because we feel that we don't matter. What good could my reaching out do? Why would it matter if I just send a message? They don't really know me. There are many ways that it can be said, but reaching out to someone matters because we are all interconnected. It matters because no one is exempt from the circle of love. I know that Unitarian Universalists emphasize the interconnection that we have, but I want to hold up compassionate empathy. There are many people who experience loneliness. To reach out to people is a kindness that supersedes just being nice. Sometimes miscommunication and different personalities do not work well. This I understand all too well. However, just a short note, a text, or a nod upon seeing someone allows another to feel that they are heard and seen. It may be all they need. I hope your imagination is open and free. I hope you take yourself seriously. I hope you take creating a community and interconnection seriously. Just reach out.
Our opening words today are taken from What Are You Here For by Quinn G. Caldwell. If you came to this place expecting a tame story, you came to the wrong place. If you came for a story that does not threaten you, you came for a different story than the one we will tell. If you came to hear of the coming of a God who only showed up so that you could have a nice day with your loved ones, then you came for a God whom we do not worship here. For even a regular baby is not a tame thing, and goodness that cannot threaten complacency and evil is not much good at all. And a God who would choose to give up power and invincibility to become an infant for you certainly didn't do it just so you could have a nice dinner. But if you came because you think that unwed teenage mothers are some of the strongest people in the world, if you came because you think that the kind of people who work third shift, doing stuff you'd rather not do, might attract an angel's attention before you, snoring comfortably in your bed, if you came because you think there are wise men and women to be found among undocumented travelers from far lands and that they might be able to show you God, if you came to hear a story of tyrants trembling while heaven comes to peasants, if you came because you believe that God loves the animals as much as the people, and so made them the first witnesses to the saving of the world, if you came for a story of reversals that might end up reversing you, if you came for a tale of adventure and bravery, where strong and gentle people win and the powerful and violent go down to dust, where the rich lose their money but find their lives, and the poor are raised up like kings. If you came to be reminded that God loves you too much to leave you unchanged, if you came to follow the light, even if it blinds you, if you came for salvation and not safety, then, my friends, you are in the right place.
For our chalice lighting, A Spark of Hope by Melanie Davis. If there ever was a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice.
And now please recite with me our covenant, which is printed in your order of service and also on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening hymn this morning is number 89 in the gray-blue hymnal, Come My Way, My Truth, My Light. Stand if you're willing and able, and we'll sing together. Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as gives us breath, such a truth as ends our strife, such a life as gives us joy. rest. Come, my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can prove, such a love as none can part, such a heart as yours.
Good morning. You hear lots of talk in the news and on the internet about things that people like to have opinions about that they don't totally understand, like crypto or socialism or abortion. You will hear lots of false information about abortion, so today we're going to learn the truth about what it actually is. This is a uterus. The uterus is a part of the body located near the stomach in cisgender women and transgender men. These are the ovaries. These are the fallopian tubes. This is the uterus itself. This is the approximate size and shape of a uterus in a person who is not pregnant. So roughly every month, the ovaries release one egg. That egg travels down the fallopian tube, hangs out in the uterus for a few days. If that egg is fertilized by a sperm cell, it becomes an embryo and the pregnancy begins. If it is not fertilized by a sperm cell, it is pushed out of the bottom of the uterus along with the lining of the uterus. That is called menstruation or a period. If a pregnancy begins, the pregnancy takes place in the uterus. If that pregnancy is ended early on purpose, that is what an abortion is. There are two different types of abortion that people can get. The first is called a medical abortion, or you might have heard it called the abortion pill. A medical abortion can be done up to around 11 or 12 weeks of pregnancy. This type of abortion involves taking two pills, actually, mifepristone and misoprostol. There will not be a quiz. These pills are taken 1 or 2 days apart, and they cause the uterus to cramp up and push out the fertilized egg and the lining of the uterus, which is mostly just blood. Once the embryo is pushed out of the uterus, the pregnancy is over. The second type of abortion is called a surgical abortion or an in-clinic abortion. It's called surgical, but it's not surgery, the way we think of things like heart surgery or brain surgery. The patient is completely awake, and they're only in the clinic for a few hours. When they get to the clinic, they will take some medication to kill the pain and to relax the opening of the uterus right here. They'll wait for a little bit for those medications to kick in, and then the doctor or nurse will use a little vacuum to go up into the uterus and gently suck out the contents. This vacuum is not like the vacuum you have at your house. It is more like the vacuum that the dentist uses to suck the juice out of your mouth while you're getting your teeth cleaned. The abortion itself takes between 5 and 10 minutes. You can get an abortion, a surgical abortion, safely after 11 weeks of pregnancy. So if you're further along in your pregnancy, you will be getting a surgical one. Early in the pregnancy, people are pretty much free to choose which type of abortion they would like to get. People might choose a medical abortion or the abortion pill because you can usually get the pills through the mail, and that's slightly more convenient than having to go into a clinic a couple of times. Some people might prefer to have an experience like that in their own home rather than in a sterile clinic setting. And a medical abortion is generally less expensive than a surgical abortion. If your insurance doesn't cover it, it will cost roughly around $500 to $800. The downsides of medical abortion are that they're usually regarded as being more painful than the surgical abortion because the cramps to push out the fertilized egg are pretty intense. The cramping and bleeding lasts for at least a few days and possibly longer. Also, after the abortion is done, the patient still has to go into a clinic so a doctor or nurse can examine them and make sure that the abortion was successful and that the fertilized egg is gone. So you can't have a medical abortion purely at home without ever going into a clinic. Finally, medical abortions have a slightly lower success rate than surgical abortions. Medical abortions are successful about 95% of the time. Surgical abortions are successful more than 99% of the time. If you get a medical abortion, you go in for your post-abortion exam, and the doctor finds that the abortion was not successful, you can still then go in to get a surgical abortion. People might choose a surgical abortion because the whole thing is done in a few hours rather than in a few days. You get to the doctor or clinic, you take your medications and wait for them to kick in. Then the abortion itself takes between 5 and 10 minutes. You know right then and there whether the abortion was successful because the doctor checks. People do usually have some bleeding after a surgical abortion, but usually not to the extent that they have one after a medical abortion. The downsides of the surgical abortion are that the patient will probably have to go to the clinic at least a couple times because of laws that exist to make abortions harder to get. So they're a little less convenient than medical abortions. Surgical abortions are usually more expensive than medical abortions. They usually cost in the ballpark of $600 to $1,500. You might have heard also of a medication called Plan B. Plan B is also called the morning after pill, and it is a drug called levonorgestrel. Plan B is not an abortion pill. It prevents pregnancy. It does not end a pregnancy. Getting an abortion is pretty much universally safer than having a baby. There are a lot of things that can go wrong in the process of pregnancy and childbirth, and a lot less can go wrong during the relatively simple and quick abortion procedure. If you would like to donate money to an abortion fund to make abortion more accessible for people who need them, you can find lots of reputable organizations online. Thank you.
I want to invite you into a moment of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. Please take a deep breath and release the tension in your body. Close your eyes or leave them at a soft gaze. May the words from my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable. Let us have eyes that see, hearts that feel, and bodies in which we can make mercy, compassion, and justice real. Let us have the courage of prayers because we desire to be good, generous, and kind. Yet we so often fall short of that goodness. Let us be humble because this work requires transformation, and change, though possible, is hard. Let our hearts and minds learn to relate to ourselves, others, and our larger society in ways that recognize our interconnectedness. In our inclusive community, let us learn equity and the power of authentic friendship, especially when we decide what we really care about. So be it. And we'll have one moment of silence.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Whose only cause will set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Our first reading this morning is Antithesis, Let Women Be Nourished for the Well-Being of the Nation. Leviticus 12, What Women Must Do After Giving Birth, by Melissa Jeter. You have heard it said that a woman who gives birth from a son is unclean for 7 days. If a daughter, unclean for 2 weeks, just as during her period, and shall not be clean for another 66 days. But I say unto you, a woman who gives birth shall be brought fresh, clean water and towels for 66 days. After the birth of either a boy or a girl, the child shall immediately be laid upon her breast for nourishment and given fine herbal teas, nuts, figs, and unleavened breads. The mother shall be brought these so she can nourish the children, be at ease from the melancholia that arrives after the birth, and gain strength. She will be washed by the wise women and mothers of the land and allowed to sleep with her babes near her, as this will allow them to grow strong in spirit and to one another. for this is good for the well-being of all people who are interconnected and interdependent. You have heard it said that after the 66 days of cleansing, the mother shall come to the tent of the priest with a young lamb to sacrifice to please God, and a dove and pigeon to sacrifice for sins. But I say unto you that when the mother and babe have been cleansed, nourished, and grown strong together in the Spirit, their attachment will be secure and blessed, and the nation shall be strong. For it is simpler to nourish and raise up spirit in people than to heal and bind a nation bereft of nourishment and spirit. Our second reading comes from Every Theory of Power is Implicitly a Theory of Community by the Reverend Martha Stortz, Pastor Power. Silence is dynamic. It does things. When silence becomes a living character in our personal narratives, it's often an accomplice to power. When I was a new seminary graduate, still short of the red tape requirements for ministry, one of my mentors, who was married, propositioned me over a period of several weeks. Today, over a decade later, I'm less stunned by his violation of boundaries and decency than I am by how little I trusted my own sense of truth about what was happening. Had he been so inclined or provoked, this minister could have uprooted the tender sapling of my ministry. His power was an entrenched magnetic force, what theologian Martha Stortz names power over, which, coupled with my doubt, coerced me into silence. What does silence gain us? What does silence cost? When I finally asked a female mentor for help, Katie took mercifully swift action, shielding me from retribution. Hers was a life-giving power with, and yet, beyond the rungs of her power, the system doggedly protected itself. The perpetrator rose in prominence, that larger silence, the sun around which the other planets of silence revolved, broke faith with me and with the truth. These days, most of the women I know are grappling with rage. It stems from the ways we've been violated and from having to question or validate what our souls know to be true. I believe that our rage is also rooted in how complicated it is to break silence, to open all of the secrets in all of our broken hearts. But silence does break. Truth seeks the light. Our secrets are beginning to breathe fresh air again and noticing they're not alone. That healing is partly fueled by the half-life of rage. But even more, we're unraveling silence because so many of us have determined that our power with one another is greater than the power someone once had over us. And now we will sing number 1007 in the Teal hymnal, There's a River Flowing. Stand as you're willing and able. Pardon?
We're gonna wait till after the sermon for that. That's fine.
Okay, all right.
We are not perfect people. We thank you for your forgiveness. The title of my sermon is Seeing the Meaning Behind the Dobbs Decision, the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Did you know that sex was added to the 1964 Civil Rights Bill as a joke? Sex was added because surely if it would not pass if women were added. I learned this not only in reading books in college, but also in my previous work in civil rights at the Toledo Fair Housing Center. 2 days after I was born, another event on the campus of Kent State University, the National Guard opened fire on students who were protesting the Vietnam War. In 1972, Title IX was passed. Title IX prohibits sex discrimination in education programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. That same year, Shirley Chisholm became the first Black woman to run for president of the United States. Chisholm said, "The emotional, sexual, and psychological stereotyping of females begins when the doctor says, 'It's a girl.'" On January 22nd, 1973, Roe versus Wade was decided. I was just a toddler. What possible meaning could the current Supreme Court decision have to me? I mentioned these particular current events to provide some historical context into which I was born. Those of you who are my elders may have lived through these events with a different awareness than I have. So the perspective that I have is different. Perhaps it makes what is invisible visible. Most of my life, I have swam in waters of awareness and anxiety about discrimination. I was socialized as a Black girl in a small rural town in southeastern Ohio. That really is the teeny tiny tip of Appalachia, though nobody claims it to be. Friday nights were centered around high school football and marching band. I was acculturated into ideas about sex and gender through these activities. Men played football, or if not, they were in marching band. Girls could play an instrument in the band, be a flag girl or a cheerleader. A few of us played percussion with the mostly male members. I played the cymbals along with 2 others, while another played the xylophone. Regardless of these cultural rules about gender, women and men both spoke football. It is a sport that has its own language. I didn't even realize that until one day I said in reference to something, "Oh no, you gotta run straight up the middle." Meaning, take the football, hold it tight, and run through the defense instead of going around. It just came out of my mouth before I realized that everyone might not speak football or appreciate the straightforward, competitive, and combative language that I was using. This can happen to anyone who has been acculturated into ideas about men and women. It happens when you lack some self and social awareness. I lived in a neighborhood where I played football with the boys. Maybe you can relate to this, maybe not, depending on your upbringing and where you grew up. I want to mention here that this may seem different and uncomfortable for some of you to think about. So take a minute to, breathe through that. I am part of Generation X, or the hip hop generation, those of us born in the late 1960s through the mid 1970s. Sometimes I feel like my generation is best explained by saying we were analog and digital. The original latchkey kids. The last generation to play outside until the street lights came on. I recall girls who were the first to play Little League baseball, but I digress. My brother invited me to his team. He figured that he needed someone who was bigger and stronger on his team. My brother knew I was strong because I've been known to hold him down, straddle him, and say, uncle, say it! I have no defense. But if you met my brother, you know that there is no way that is happening now. He is much bigger and stronger now. Then I was stronger, but I was also older by 2 years. I knew the plays, how to run the ball. Throwing a football was not necessarily my best, but I could block and tackle. I knew how much yardage I needed to get to make a first down. Getting your team down the field is an objective of the game to make a touchdown. I blocked and tackled with the boys and vice versa because I was a part of a team. I think I used to run touchdowns with boys holding on to me, just dragging behind me. Until the day a new boy in the neighborhood played with us. He made a beeline for me. I had the ball. He hit me with such intent that I knew instantly he was no longer playing football. He was telling me on no uncertain terms that girls do not play football. I barely walked out of the yard. My brother swears that he and his friend's mother thought I had a concussion. My football playing days were over. I don't even think I was 10 or 11 years old. The unspoken gender rules were being spoken. That young boy from outside the neighborhood challenged whatever aggression I had. Boys are supposed to be the aggressors, and the girls? It was and is the culture, the values, norms, and social mores that defined how a female body or male body should be. It is a message that holds some people in less esteem if you happen not to conform to the gender rules. The science does not support females being inherently weak and males as inherently aggressive, but instead supports that there is much variation in the hominid species we call human. The anthropological work of Dr. Agustin Fuentes, who researches and teaches at Princeton University, says that culturally, we hold some ideas as truth that are not so. You can read about his book. You can read about this more in his book, Race, Monogamy, and Other Lies They Told You, to uncover more. These gendered cultural messages that I received as a Black girl playing football, that Shirley Chisholm said began when the doctor says, it's a girl. And the joke that government officials thought would stall the passage of civil rights legislation are messages that dehumanize women and then non-gender conforming people, and are contrary to compassion and nonviolence. They are harmful, and in my theological opinion, they amount to existential violence. These harmful gendered messages are a way that our culture limits, controls, and dominates, oppresses, dismisses, disregards, and attacks persons who are female and any person who does not conform to the rules of gender. These gendered messages allude to power dynamics in relationships that need to be questioned. They may just be the same messages that have fueled the Dobbs decision regarding Roe versus Wade. I have been following the work of an African American man. His name is Tony Porter, and his organization called A Call to Men. Porter has talked about his socialization into what it means to be a man. He is an educator, an activist, calling for an end to violence against women. In an open letter to men in response to the Supreme Court decision, Porter wrote, "The Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade speaks directly to the harmful parts of male socialization that have plagued women for centuries. The audacity to feel that we as men have the right to tell women what to do with their bodies comes from the collective socialization of viewing women as having less value than men, as objects, and as the property of men. This means we can make decisions on their behalf because we think we know what's best for them, resulting in their denigration and dehumanization." I grew up with an awareness that it might take some effort and risk to live life. I was a strong kid. Yet as a young female person, I was socialized to be nice. However, nice seems to mean less than. Nice women yield to power. Nice women have less confidence in themselves. Nice women distrust their experiences. Nice women gaslight themselves. And nice women, when they see other women that break the gender rules, they gaslight them too. Nice women may be silent or refrain from feminist, womanist, and intersectional analysis of power. Why? Because nice women fear the retribution of systems of power that control and dominate. So what do nice women do when their back is against the wall, pinned down with nowhere to turn? What are the rights and protections of citizenship of women in America? Who is included? Am I included? What about these women? Anita Hill, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Christine Blasey Ford. What about you? When the rights and protections of citizenship are eaten away, those who are marginalized are at risk for more hostility and benevolent sexism. Hostile sexism is marked by a sense of superiority, competition, and domination, while benevolent sexism assumes that because women are weak, they must be protected. But the science doesn't support this. Not that we thought our way into this. Moreover, this hostility not only gets directed at women, but also any non-gender conforming person. The culture holds mixed, contradictory, and anxious feelings about systemic discrimination of persons who are female and persons who refrain from conforming to the rules of gender. Perhaps changing the culture requires us to look at how patterns of hypermasculinity, toughness, emotional insensitivity, and a lack of empathy harms the relationships we have with one another. Porter of A Call to Men tells a memorable story of being a young boy and peer pressured by older boys. I encourage you to seek this out on YouTube and watch this. Porter also asked himself, what does it mean to be a boy if the worst thing he could be called is a girl? Who are you if your definition of self is the opposite of another? What kind of way of relating to another person is it if there is one who has power over and the other submits? This pattern often manifests as heteronormativity. We think it's normal. The culture dictates that the normal way of relating to another is one where a person has power or aggression, and the other is weak and protected. Relationships between any people, however, must consider mutuality. How can I be a nice woman when my personhood, as well as my rights of citizenship, are violated? In the words of Maya Angelou, I am a feminist. I have been a female for a long time now. I'd be stupid not to be on my own side. Porter, from A Call to Men, continues in his letter. A Call to Men defines taking away a woman's right to choose as a form of violence. The effects of the violence are intensified in the lives of Black, brown, rural, and financially poor women who already have high maternal mortality rates, poor access to health care, and a lack of appropriate reproductive education. 50 years of bodily autonomy is not enough. It is hard for me to understand why this decision is not a private medical decision. I only feel the violent enforcement of the gender rules of our culture brutally attacking me, tackling me, and telling me I have no right to be. Our imagination must be open to accept there are variations of male and female, just as we must accept that there are different groups of racialized people. No one group is chosen or so exceptional that it is morally right for one to have power over and control and dominate the other. I believe that our faith calls for mutuality in relationships. Thus, we all need to have mercy, justice, and compassion in the world. If we are to stop seeking it for another who is marginalized in our culture, in our community, how can we expect to have it for ourselves? And this lack of mercy, justice, and compassion is what is also so enraging about this Supreme Court decision on abortion. I mean, there are 2 men on the Supreme Court. Am I missing somebody? There are 2 men on the Supreme Court who allegedly raped and sexually harassed women. How different that 50 years could have been if it also came with recognition of how providing health care to female persons benefits the whole society. How different could that 50 years have been if we considered persons with female bodies as capable, self-determined, and as worthy of life as worthy of all life has to offer? I said ideally, because, that's not the world we're living into. Unitarian Universalists, however, will side with love. The kind of love that accepts differences and mutuality. The love that supports the right of persons to have reproductive medical care, including access to abortion. I hope you consider, I know we've got snow today and we haven't had any in a long time. We don't know how to act. I hope you consider going to the local event in solidarity with Roe versus Wade on Collingwood. Our imaginations have been narrow, but the reality is that we must accept and hold people with female bodies in esteem commensurate with sustaining the life of all communities. Because the esteem of one is that of all. No one is outside the circle of love.
Thank you, Melissa, for that very thought-provoking message this morning. And now, your order of service is correct. My notes were not. Now is the time that we will open our teal hymnals to 1007 and sing together, "There's a River Flowing in My Soul." Now it's time to consider your offering. And I'm reading from the words of Victoria Weinstein, "Generosity is our spiritual value." This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with membership open to all who are in accordance with our principles, mission, and vision. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations, and we unconditionally welcome any and all of you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and moral beings. our congregation is entirely self-governed by democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving. And you may give in several ways. You can go to our website, utoledo.org, click Give, and then click on Online Giving. Or you can mail a check to 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614. And thirdly, you may drop your offering in the basket in the foyer.
Coming soon, Spiritual Forum next Sunday at 9:45 a.m. Sage Elder Session with Julia McGee on getting old. We're all going to get there. We're all going to get there. We're lucky. We're lucky. And coming soon, next Sunday's service at 11 a.m. in the sanctuary and on YouTube will be Reverend Rod Thompson. Some people remember him. Our Struggle and Our Power. And I want, right after service today, you are invited to coffee and conversation in Fellowship Hall, down the hall and to your left. So I have these closing words. Be about the work. Do you want to do it together? No, you're fine. By Andrea Hawkins Camper. May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For if not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice, the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history and the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now, to be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. And now we're going to send the flame with you. And this is by As Breath to Song by Becky Laurent. As a flame is to spirit, so spirit is to breath, and breath to song. Though we extinguish the flame in this sanctuary, may we tend it in our hearts until we meet again. And Tom will play a postlude.